Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. All these sessions are tape recorded, as you know, and they do get posted to the website afterwards. The agenda for today are new features and fixes since the last time we met. Then I'm going to spend some time on custom columns and plans, and whether or not your organization is currently using plans, there's a lot of capabilities in plans with our customs columns functionality. So I'm going to be going over that, and then a tip of the month. We've not had a lot of software enhancements go in since the last time we met. The changes have been we increased the size of the field that contains both the scenario name and the scenario patient name, or whatever you've chosen to be the second column in your test header to display, to make it more readable. And I can show that an example of that. We fixed a display issue when scrolling through large amounts of data in the test steps or the test header. It was particularly noticed in the test header. So if you're making good use of the test header and putting in all your appointment information, all of your clinical data, your order sets, all that sort of stuff into the header page, then if it was very, very long and had lots of data in it, you wouldn't be able to see the end unless you click the edit icon. So that's been fixed. We also had a workflow issue. If you were in the test steps page and you had marked something as an issue there, and you went and updated the issue to be, for example, resolve pending testing, and you went back and reset the test step, and then closed out that test step, and then went and marked the issue closed, it would actually reset the step back to issue. So that's been fixed now. Those two have been divorced. And when you update a test step to issue, it still logs the issue, still opens the issue. But if you change the status on the issue to closed, it doesn't go back and reopen the test step anymore, or change it back to issue. We also put in a fix in the Build Audit. When you run the Build Audit and you find positions that are missing in, or positions that are missing, sorry, steps that are missing positions, you used to have to fix the step to advance to the next, and had a specific request to be able to skip in case somebody wasn't responsible for the whole test script and you didn't know what to choose for the position and want to go on to the next one. And so that's been fixed. And so then one that's been a long time coming, which is making sure that the reported by now shows up on the test report. So I'm going to show some of those things here. So the first one is increasing the size of the field that contains the scenario name and the scenario patient name, or whatever you've chosen to show in this column here. So you can see here, this is a specifically long name of a scenario. And so when you used to click here to go into the test steps page, this would all get cut off. And so now we've really significantly increased the size here. So it shows not only the whole name of the scenario, but also the patient names if the patient names happen to be long as well. The second thing was we fixed an issue with scrolling for information in the header in particular. So if we look at this one here, we go in and look at the header. I know some of yours have a lot more than 72 fields in. Some of the ones we do have a lot more as that as well. But it used to be if you scrolled too quickly in here, that the data would get cut off at the bottom. And so we've changed that display and it now scrolls more appropriately. The same is true in the test steps page itself. So if you're in test steps and you scroll too quickly, it sort of cut off the bottom of the page. The third one about updating a status of a test step, that's too complicated to show here, but basically when you close an issue after you've already marked the step as passed, it doesn't go and update that back to issue like it used to. The next one then is the Build Audit report. And so you can see here I've run the Build Audit and two of my test scripts are missing steps. And so to go and correct that, what you do is you go inside your scenario, and then up here, this is going to step me through all of the positions that are all the steps that are missing a position. So if I click this once, it's going to move down the few steps to that first nurse manager that was missing. So I can go in here and I can change it and say that the position was supposed to be. Oops. Nurse manager. And it's going to automatically advance me to the next step where I was supposed to make corrections, which happens to be down here. If for some reason I didn't want to correct that one, then if I click this twice, it's going to skip me down to that step 39 that was also missing a position. So it used to be that you couldn't advance without correcting it, but now you can advance through and skip the ones that you don't want to update, either because somebody else is updating it or because you need to research it and go back to them at a later time. And then again, it's going to advance me to the next one and so on. So the last thing that I was going to show then is, oops. The information showing on the test report. So where is my tab? Here it is. Sorry about, I lost my tab. There it is. Okay, so if you click on the test report, then the test report did not used to show who a note was reported by. So it always has shown the assigned, but obviously, if you're wanting to know who reported it to search on or to filter on all the ones that were yours, for example, you now have the ability to go in and easily do it, which you couldn't do. So a very simple fix, but one that was very heavily requested. Those are all of the fixes to go over for this month. So the next item then is on to custom columns. So whether or not your organization is using plans now, it might be something you're considering using in the future. So a little bit about plans. Plans are just lists of activities. So if you're trying to share work with a broad group of people, none of whom have access to Microsoft Project, for example, then plans is an easy way to do that. And we added last year functionality that allows you to customize all of these columns to be anything you want. So before that, it was it was a standard view. It would have type, it would have activity, it would have category and group, but you were stuck with the columns we had. As of last year, you can customize the columns to be anything that you want them to be. So for example, if you're using Cerner's new cutover plans and you don't like the way they work and you want to export them out, you can make a template that you continuously use so that you can export their plans and import them into TransIT and manipulate them in TransIT, or for anything else you want to use them for. In the specific example I'm going to show, it was for an in-house backload. So you're getting ready to roll out to a new facility and you want to find an easy way to track prior to cutover whether or not all of your patients have been backloaded. And so before custom columns were there, if I click inside here, we used to do each of these columns as a separate row in the plan. It was just, a lot of stuff to manage and track. And so now in this view here, what we've done is we've listed, realizing we don't want to really put any PHI into TransIT. So we've listed every bed in the facility here. And then typically at a lot of my go lives, we've had clinical informaticists run this for us. So they each had a number of a floor or a couple of floors that they were responsible for tracking this data for. So there's an ability to use our assigned column, and then we broke it down into what was the new patient FIN. So when you registered the patient in your new system, what was the FIN number that was generated? And so, registration staff go in and they start filling in this data. So when they registered the patient to this room, they filled in this data. So because of the fact that there's no user license limits, you can give access to anybody you want in here. So we gave it to registration, and then for the rest of these columns, we had clinical informatics go in and do the updates. So once a patient had been registered, a group of people were responsible for putting in height, weight, and allergies. and a different group of people were responsible for putting in non-med orders, and then other clinical documentation. And then we had pharmacy responsible for putting in med orders. After everything was put in, there was a quality check done. And then at go live, one of the last steps before was doing a census reconciliation. So to make sure that whoever this was in this fin, that this is still the fin associated with this bed and that you hadn't missed in keeping track of discharges and getting new people in. So because it's TransIT columns, everybody can go in and update this at the same time, and they don't have to be in a room anywhere. So I can remember being at cutovers and trying to get a hold of my clinical informatics people to say, where are you at? Where are you at? And you could never get the answers. And now they can just put that data in themselves. The one thing that you do as the project manager, though, is you'll scroll through. And so this percentage complete is manually updated by the person managing the plan. So I was using it for when they were registered, it was 15% complete, and this was 30, this was 45, this was 60, and so on, till we got to 100% complete. So ideally, an hour before cutover, everything in your plan is showing 90%, and that last 10% is doing the census reconciliation. And obviously, because it's a TransIT plan, you can filter, any of the columns. So if I'm looking for the ones that I'm personally responsible for, I can filter to mine, and you can see I've done nothing on mine yet. That was the last thing I was going to show on custom columns, but I'll stop and ask if anyone has any questions. Okay, if not, I'll show how you get to custom columns. To get to custom columns, to add any of these columns in, you go to the column heading here and you choose change columns, and then you choose custom columns. Inside custom columns, these ones at the top that are blank by the label, these are the ones that come standard with TransIT, and you can see the changes I've made. Anything with a 1 in here means I've hidden it. So you see I've basically hidden almost every column that is out there except for the category and the task name. All of the columns below here are customs ones that I configured. When you configure a custom column, you give it a name, and then you have to define the width of the column, what type of data is going to be in the column, and then you can also, these info title over here are the hover text if you hover over that column. Very easy to create. If you wanted to add a new field, you click the add field, you give it a label. You give it a type. If you wanted to make it one where you can assign people to it, then obviously you have to use either I think it's the user contact field, but each of these sort of say what type of field it is. Most of mine were text. It defaults in. If you hover here, it tells you what in more information about that field. If you want it to be at the end, if I move this over, you can see the display sequences right here. So I was using these numbers. If I want it to be at the end of my existing fields, I would choose like 58 or something greater than 58. So let's say I'll choose 60. Then the reference group is if you were choosing something that has a reference file behind it. And then this is where you put in the hover text. So when I save that column is instantly added to my plan. So if I go back here and scroll over, here it is, my demo for the virtual user group. So these columns here all have numbers as well. And so these numbers are beyond 50. And then that field is instantly accessible to anybody using the plan. The one reminder that I will say is if you're going to use custom columns for things like cutover plans, you're going to want to have a template that you always create the same one so that they can all marry up with each other. If you want more information on this or any of the other features, always remember that you can go to the reports and go to training materials, and then there's a whole bunch of guides here. So under the plans training guide would be where you'd find information on this. Going back then to our tip for this month. We get questions every once in a while about why certain things aren't showing up on a display. And more often than not, when we go to look at it, it's because people have used special characters, either in a script name or in a section name, or sometimes in the test steps. For example, the greater than and less than symbol, if you enclose information inside that, then in HTML, that means to omit the text. So your text will be missing. Or if you use any of these special characters like quotes, for example, inside of a section name, then the section doesn't display on the test dashboard appropriately. So the tip is really just to avoid the use of special characters whenever you can. If there are any questions, then we would love to hear from you. If not, if you have suggestions for a future topic for one of these virtual user group meetings, please contact us at support@makesolutionsInc.com.